What up? What up? Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all, hey. Hey, hey. Let's start with a little music. I think that'll. It's just time to optimize. H2O's essential to life. Yeah, optimize. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I am so sorry that I started um, my recorded podcast 30 minutes late. I had too many things on my calendar and I had this showing up as starting at 6:30 and not at 6. We'll correct that problem in the future. Nonetheless, I am setting the intention for this show that you know that all kinds of possibilities are available to you, all kinds, and we can do anything. That's my hello, that's my intention, and that's my affirmation to you all. And I do want to do an intentional plug and share with you all some things that are coming up. And we were going to go on from there. Okay, for some of you, you already know that I have a book out. It's called Almost Doesn't Count, or Does It? You can go to my website at H2o-1.com. Again, that's H2o-1.com, and you can get your copy, not only of the Almost Doesn't Count or Does It book, but you can also pick up the H2O theme song, Healing to Optimization or Optimize. Again, both of these can be found on my website, and they are hyperlinked to the to Amazon. Okay, a few other things that are going on right now. We have already started the H2o Nutritional Classes on Monday and Thursdays. I do have recordings for just one of those once a week class. So if you're interested, please let me know and I can share that recording with you. But if you go to Book Now at the top of the page, you'll see Home, About, and Book Online. I'm sorry. It will bring you to the option for nutritional coaching. So if this is something you're interested in, I have flyers already on that page that you can look through and just see which one speaks to your heart the most. I can always customize a class for you. So just get in contact with me, let me know what you'd like, and we can go from there. But please make sure it's during the actual hour. Let me clarify that. Please make sure that you contact me earlier on so that I can schedule it within the actual lesson. Okay, so if you decide that you want to enroll in the class, we are in a situation where we can modify the class to make sure that perhaps if the class you wanted has already passed, we can maybe work some of that material into the desired date and time that you want. But as of now, the classes are only offered Monday, Thursdays between 7:30 and 8:30. Okay, which transitions us right into our transitional coaching classes. Okay, these group classes are offered on Tuesday, Wednesday, 7:30 to 8:30. Okay, again, that's Tuesday, Wednesday, 7:30 to 8:30. Again, you can go to the booking online, look for transitional coaching, and it will bring you to this page. You can see all of the upcoming workshops and classes that we have for this semester. Maybe some changes on when certain classes will be offered, but we do start next month. So if this is something that interests you, please be sure to go to the website and enroll in the class or the workshop. There are 3 different plans that you can explore and see which one best suits your financial, your budget, and go from there. If you have any questions, just reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, if you have not purchased your Almost Doesn't Count book yet, please be sure to go and purchase that book, because once we start the 3 workshops for the book, it'll make much more sense to you after you have read the book. If you haven't, it is not a big problem. The content and the design for the workshops have been designed in a way that whether you have the book or you don't, the conversations and the topics that we'll address during that class can and will be available to anyone, whether they have the book or not. So just join in if that's something that interests you. Okay, so I just want to share a little bit with you. I'm going to stop screen sharing because I want you to more so focus on what I'm sharing with you as opposed to trying to follow a screen. And I've set it up that way intentionally because the topic of the hour, much of this is going to be dispersed within the classes that'll be offered throughout this semester. So I'm sharing it with you because I do want you to focus, but then I also hope to inspire you so that you'll actually enroll in the class and we can get into much more details around these topics, because it's just not a lot of time right now to unpack much of what we'll be covering during this hour. But we are going to make the most of our time, and hopefully you all will be able to gain some takeaways and some things that will not only make you think, but also encourage you to move your thoughts into action. That being said, I am going to go to my screen and I'm going to be sharing and reading from that screen. Please forgive me for keeping on glasses. If I take these things off, we may have a little bit of challenge, but I may just blow up my text so that we can resolve that issue much easily. Okay, if you have seen any of the flyers rotating on social media, the IG or Facebook, then you know today's topic I'm going to be focusing on addressing limited belief systems. And I just want to give you a little description, and then I'm going to go into why I think that's a suitable topic for now. Our topic for the hour, we are starting the journey of unpacking and understanding our thought life with precision. We will further this journey by applying practical and not so practical tools to renew ourselves, resulting in our nexus into our best version. This is what I consider to be a page turner or a chapter turner, Turner, depending on where you are in your life. This may be something that's just turning the pages for you, or this just may be information that's helping you to literally change a chapter in your life concerning how you are addressing your belief systems that perhaps are limiting and are that have been limited. Okay, so why now? For the last several weeks, the Spirit has taken me deeper into addressing my personal narratives that have continued to disempower me. Without hesitation, I quickly opened myself without hesitation, I've quickly opened myself for direction and application. Okay, at this stage in life, I understand very clearly when the Spirit is pulling you into something, the best thing you can do is just humble yourself, submit, and just say yes and go on about the journey. Okay, as a result, during my meditation time, many things were brought to my attention, as well as techniques to be used to renew or to renovate. Much like many of us, I was focusing on up-leveling one particular area in my life, and the Spirit guided me to the entire system. Sometimes we can be encouraged to do something that's good, or we want to really up-level a particular area of our life, and we want to do the impossible, so to speak. But what I learned over these last couple of weeks is the importance of understanding how the system itself works, how your belief system is working. So you're not necessarily targeting a particular area as much as you are going deep within the system itself, so that no matter what it is that you desire, or no matter what it is you want to manifest in your life, it's possible without question or doubt, because you've developed an entire system around not just believing, but knowing into the thing that you want to manifest. Okay. And um, I'm going to do the best I can not to complicate the matters, but there is going to be a lot of content that we cover in a short period of time. And I know that some of the material is going to inspire you, and you're probably going to stop and just have to maybe consider the things that I'm sharing with you. Anyway, let's keep going. What I will be sharing with you are a few of those techniques, as well as topics to discuss, so that you can start or further your journey in addressing limited beliefs or limiting beliefs. So what I know when you engage and apply the techniques we discuss during this podcast, my intention for you is to be changed, and hopefully changed to something that you desire to change into, or some things you may not even know that you desire, but the Spirit is going to illuminate in you what it is that is going to be fitting for this next cycle or chapter of your life. This change will position you into restoring leaking personal power. Oftentimes, when our thinking is not in alignment, or perhaps our belief systems are not in alignment, then we are constantly leaking that power out, or leaking our personal power out in some way or in some fashion. Or we're just simply restricted in a lot of the ways that we can move in our own thinking life, which ultimately is going to impact the way that we participate in life. The topics addressed during our conversation will increase your self-awareness. I have no doubt that the things that we'll discuss during this time will not only create change, but it will increase your self-awareness. If anything, it may just be a reminder. So let's get started with a couple of attention getters, or just a few facts that you may be aware of, but perhaps maybe not so much. I asked this question to my guests last week if they knew how many thoughts we think within a day. And so I touched on that, and I'm going to come back to that. One of the things I do believe as a teacher is to repeat, review, and rehearse, or some of the other modern phrases is wash, rinse, and what is it? Wash, rinse, and repeat. That being said, let's go back over that. So within a day, we can think anywhere to over 6,000 is what some research suggests, or anywhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts in one day. That's a lot of thinking. So within a moment, we can think anywhere between 3 to 4 thoughts, or anywhere up to 10 to 12 thoughts in a single moment. I really don't know how long a moment is, but I thought it would be neat just to break down the time of the day. We know that there's 24 hours in one day, but oftentimes we don't think about how many minutes consist in a day. And there's 1,440 minutes in a day. We break that down and look at how many seconds are in a day. There's 86,400. So just let your mind kind of play with these numbers. You have so many thoughts that you're thinking in a day, and so much time that you have in a day. Thoughts are energy. Our thoughts are electric, magnetic signals sending out measurable energy. So we need to understand that our thoughts are aware, our thoughts are conscious, our thoughts have weight, they have mass. Okay. Our thoughts are electromagnetic signals sending out measurable energy. The brain is 2% of our total body mass, but uses 20% of our entire energy. Okay. So let's just go over a few facts. So we know that last week I asked my guests a question of how many thoughts do we think within a day? And of course, I gave the stat during that time. But one of the things I do believe as a teacher is that we need to be able to repeat, review, and rehearse. And some of the modern phrases to that is wash, rinse, and repeat. So we have anywhere between 6,000 or over 6,000 up to, some research suggests, 60 to 80,000 thoughts in a day. In a particular moment of time, I'm not really sure how much a moment actually is, but we can hold up to 3 to 4 thoughts, or anywhere between 10 to 12 thoughts, depending on the research, in a given moment. Okay. Minutes per day, we often are aware of how many hours are within a day, which is 24, but we don't often think about how many minutes are in a day. There's 1,440. Anybody know how many seconds there are in a day? 86,400. So play with those numbers for a bit and really consider how many thoughts you have in a day and how many minutes and seconds that you have in a day. And if you could imagine how much of our time is taken up by our thoughts or thinking. Let's take it a step further. Thoughts are energy. Our thoughts are electromagnetic signals sending out measurable energy. So our thoughts can be measured. They have mass. They exist. Right? They can be weighted, if you will. The brain is 2% of our total body mass, but uses 20% of our entire energy. This is about 350 calories. Right? So our brain is using burning up about 350 or more calories just on the function of activity or thinking. That's a lot of energy just to think. When we start looking at the different stages of consciousness, there are 5 known stages. You have gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Gamma is when we look at frequency, or when we look at the brain being measured for activity, electric activity. When you are in a state of gamma, you're looking at greater than 30 hertz. So this is a lot of activity that's going on in the brain. But what's very special about the gamma state is that the gamma state is where a person can be in a very high focused or a very high performing state. Right? So the brain is either processing a lot of information, but it's getting really narrowed and really focused on how it's processing that information. Or for the athlete who gets into that state of flow, they have usually stepped into a state of gamma. When you look at the beta state, this is our awakened state. This is the state of where we're just very observant of our surroundings. Okay. The activity in our brain is measured between 13 to 30 hertz. There's still a lot of activity that's happening. When we shift down from our conscious states to our subconscious states, we're looking at alpha and theta. Alpha is our subconscious state where we see anywhere between 8 to 12 hertz of activity that's happening. This is where we have a daydream, or a light sleeping state. When we come into theta, we're thinking about our sleep realm, right? So the brain activity, as we're noticing, as we go from conscious to subconscious, the brain activity is actually starting to lower, which is very needed. And we'll maybe touch on some of those things in this time, or we'll come back to it in some of our classes. But anyway, so we see from theta, we move into delta. Delta is an unconscious state, and there's less than 4 hertz of activity that's happening. But it's a very powerful state as we get into a rested state, because it's been suggested that the delta state is where we begin to alter reality. Okay, so a fun fact, according to journals, sagepub.com, humans can experience 1 to 4 emotions per day. Okay, 1 to 4 emotions per day. So just a summary reflective thought is, consider how many thoughts are flowing through the brain a day, how much brain power it's taking to filter, if you will, those thoughts. And then think about how it's having an impact on your emotions. We see these big numbers of thoughts, but yet we see these very few emotional ranges that we have throughout the day. Now, I'm sure that there's other material that can support that we go through many more emotions throughout the day, which could be very possible, especially with as many thoughts that we have in one day. But it does make me consider, if we're having very few emotions throughout the day, what emotional state are you in more frequently than others? And how is your thought life having a contribution to your emotional state? Think about that. If you're a person full of stress, think about what you're thinking. Okay, let's dive into it. So your body is made up of about 35 billion cells. Every cell in your body is made up of 0.07 millivolts of electricity. The human body can store 13.5 billion years worth of data. You may or may not be aware that scientists or engineers they have learned how to store massive amounts of energy just within our DNA, right? Or just within the atoms in our body. And so when we think about humans being able to store 13.5 billion years worth of data, this is perhaps how these discoveries are coming about. It's because we are now using human cells and human DNA. We're understanding how to engineer these things and how to store zeros and ones into these biological systems. Okay. Oddly enough, this 13.5 billion year mark is the same suggested age of the universe. Very interesting to think about. So why did I go over all of that information? It's because I want you to really consider how powerful we are, how high functioning we are, and how we are crafted with the highest design and intention. And so when we are not considerate of how we move about in this world, then we have a lot of power that's just being released from us. And we have a lot of passive existence that deserves us to come into ourselves and start to be intentional about the way that we are showing up in the world. So if you need to, go back in the recording and rehearse some of the facts that I shared with you. And perhaps these facts will change in the near future as we discover more about humanity. But it does some good for us just to be aware of the potentiality that each of us have, that each human being has, in the way that we can show up for ourselves as well as for the collective. But let's go into this. You need to understand that your body is made up of your thought life and what you eat. And there's many other factors that we can include in that. But for the most part, what I want you to narrow your focus into is that you need to be aware that your body is made up of your thought life and what you eat. Your soft tissues are recording all kinds of data about what you are thinking and obviously what you are absorbing as nutrients or not absorbing as nutrients. As an LMT or licensed massage therapist, I can attest that your body carries energy and that energy can be absorbed. Energy can be sent out or received. I am more inclined to know that your thought life is giving off a certain kind, grade, and quality of energy. One of the things that I want to share with you is that during a session with the client, I will always remember this moment. This is one of the first moments that the transfer of energy really becoming real for me. I've always, well, not always, but I've believed that energy transferred from person to person for many, many years. But it was during a session that this became real for me in a very different kind of way. One of my clients had a protrusion out their back, and they weren't really sure what it was, but they had did something where they were moving some things around the house and kind of tweaked their back in a particular way. But what I noticed about this particular person was not just the protrusion or the soft tissue adhesion, or I'm not really sure how to classify it at this point, but it wasn't just that I noticed about this client, but it was the way that this client talked about themselves. And it was not generally in a healthy way. They always had something very negative to say about themselves. And so what I noticed throughout the session, I could feel that energy, the quality of that energy changing depending on the area that there was different qualities of soft tissue. But when I got to this particular area that had a little bit more of a quality or a protrusion out of the skin, it wasn't an injury and it wasn't anything too serious. The person was very knowledgeable about their body and said that it was okay to provide a therapeutic touch for them. But what I noticed is once I began to apply pressure and this part of the soft tissue began to resolve, that there was an energy that was released that came out in a belch for me. And I don't have the signs to prove exactly what happened during that exchange. But what I found really strange was during that same moment as I belched, the client responded in a release and then began to ask me, what was that? And my belch was not audible. It was a very light belch. But when I tell you the energy I felt just in that release and the taste that this had was indescribable. And my breath was clean. I believe it was. And I hadn't ate anything, so I know it wasn't food coming up. But I do believe that that toxicity that was in that client's body was released because after the pressure was applied and that part of the body was adjusted, it was gone, just like that. It was gone. So what I remembered about that is the understanding that our bodies are carrying what we eat and what we think. And when either one of these are out of alignment, you can best believe it's going to show up in our bodies in a way that is less desirable and that causes some kind of discomfort or pain. So just something to keep in mind. So as we observe, two different tips I'm going to offer you that you can do to start really getting into what's happening in your mind, what's happening in the economy of your thoughts, two things that I would suggest you to do that are simple, but I think it's very powerful. That's going to get you into a position where you start moving deeper into understanding how the cycle of your thoughts are functioning. One of the first things I encourage you to do as we journey into addressing our limited beliefs is to observe what are the contents of your thoughts just in a moment. Okay. You may need to pause the video so that you can actually do this, but I do strongly encourage you to really consider and to write it down. Write down what it is that is in your thoughts, even right now, whether it's 3 to 4 things or whether it's 10 to 12 things, but really push yourself. I would even say write 10 different things that's coexisting in your mind right now. This is one of the first steps that we can move into to start understanding what's happening in our thought life, which is very likely it's revealing what's happening in our subconscious on a day-to-day basis. And it's stimulating a certain kind of emotion that we may or may not be aware of. So that's one of the first things I want you to do. Decide if any of the content of your thoughts is contributing to your highest good or it is depleting your life, literally. Second thing I want you to do is disengage. And you may be asking, disengage from what? Every title that's attached to you, find a space in your mind where you are free from anything that would stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight. So when we think about our autonomic nervous system, it's made up of 2 branches, right? There's many different systems within our body. The nervous system is one of these systems that has a huge part in the way that we show up in the world. But to simplify this as much as I can, when we think about the autonomic nervous system, there are 2 branches. There's the sympathetic and there's the parasympathetic. And I will go over this again. The sympathetic part of our nervous system deals with the fight or flight. In essence, this is a constant state where we are excited in some kind of way. When we are excited in this kind of way, likely it is going to create some kind of compromise to the rest of our body. Okay. So generally, people are in a constant state of anxiety. So it's not just these good excitements, which is not a problem. Good stress is a good thing to have, right? If we're getting ready to maybe be married or graduate, or we're getting ready to take on a new job, these are good kinds of stress. But more than likely, many of us deal with that negative kind of stress that is depleting our energy, more cases than not. But what we want to do is in our thinking is we want to create a space where we can detach from as many of our titles and responsibilities as possible. So the slither of time right before you wake, all of your awareness, generally during that space, the only thing that you are aware of is your breathing and your body. As much as you can, consider this time. At least this is an example that I can share. Maybe you have other examples that you can share. But this space where you're not mom, you're not dad, you're not your job title, you're not any of that. You're only breathing and your body. That's it. Okay. This is an example of a detached or a disengaged space where you're not attached to any other titles. When you can create this space or think about this space and grow it, then what you're doing is you are lessening, you're putting yourself in a position where you lessen being stressed, having the anxiety, and then depression is a different spectrum. Okay. But what we're referring to right now is helping to reduce that stress and that anxiety and the overstimulation of our sympathetic nervous system. To go a little deeper into that, those were the 2 tips I'm going to share for now, because I think that that alone will occupy not just your time, but that will give you some work, some homework to work on. And it's going to take a little bit. As simple as those may appear, to actually put it into practice does take some time and it does take some commitment. But the reason why we're doing this is because there's a thing called coherence. Okay. So, as a certified heart math health intervention professional, I am going to share with you their definition of coherence. As we know, it can be used in many different contexts, but for this context, coherence is the state when the heart, mind, and emotions are in energetic alignment and cooperation. Why is this important? Because when you are in discoherence, you are likely depleting energy, okay? Which means you are stimulating your sympathetic nervous system. Again, I'm just going to repeat some of this information so that it becomes more clear to you. You're positioning your body to remain in a state of stress, which will ultimately impact your endocrine system or your endocrine glands, which this is associated with your hormones. Okay, hormones we know are chemicals that generally cascade throughout our bodies. But the particular hormone that is associated with stress, can you guess what it is? You got it, cortisol. So it can lead to rapid weight gain, skin that bruises easily, muscle weakness, diabetes, and so many other health problems. So cortisol itself is good because it does help us to regulate our bodies when we are in a state of stress or in any other kind of emotion associated with that. But when we have an overproduction of cortisol in the system, it is not leveraging us into our best. So generally, when a person has moved into a place where now their muscles have been weakened or they're dealing with diabetes or any kind of health problems, it's very likely that they've shifted into a chronic state of stress. Okay. What I was taught was when something becomes chronic, it takes 21 days or more for it to become chronic. But according to the CDC website, they say it takes about a year for something to become chronic. And I'm assuming that it's very conditional, and perhaps it depends on what the problem may be. But generally speaking, these are the two numbers I'm going to provide you. One way or another, when your baseline or your starting point of the day is chronic stress, this can be more dangerous than a one-time traumatic event because your body starts to position itself where it is constantly stimulating not just the sympathetic nervous system, but it's constantly producing cortisol throughout the body. So when you are choosing to normalize your day-to-day stress, you are constantly stimulating these areas and the overproduction of cortisol, which is preparing you for a life of depletion and dissatisfaction. And of course, many other things that I've mentioned just a few sentences ago. Get clear about where you need to heal. This is going to be one of your leveraging points. As you get clarity on where you need to heal and where your energy, let me go back for a bit because I think this is important to understand. When you are creating that space of disengagement or what I call your beingness, or you're in a state of is where it's just you are aware that you are present and not attached. I mean, just what I described. But when you are in that state, what you start to gain clarity around is when the thoughts come into your life. You can really start to discern how it's having an impact on your energy, how it feels. Either it's something that's contributing to you, building you up, or it's something that's taking energy away from you. It's very important to discern your thoughts and to discern how they are having a contribution on the way that you participate in life. And I'll say that again. It is very important to discern how thoughts are making you feel because it is likely it's having an impact on the way that you are participating in life. Place intention into your thought life. Okay, when we talk about getting clarity to heal, place your intention into your thought life. Firstly, be intentional about releasing endorphins or positive chemicals in your body, right? Endorphins in particular, they reduce pain and boost pleasure. We can all use that and a little bit more of it, right? But we're sending these chemicals throughout our bloodstream. And of course, the bloodstream is going throughout the systems of our body, going throughout our organs. So it's actually up leveling or optimizing the way that our body functions. Just a quick note, I mean, there's many things that we can discuss in this topic alone, but I will say this, as you're gaining clarity on where you need to heal, be very conscientious about where you also need to reconcile, relationships in particular. If there are relationships where you have shared or you have been the person that have initiated a breach, then do the best that you can to get closure in that area. If the person has already passed on, you still need to create some kind of closure in your thought life so that whatever that loop is or that pain pattern is that's attached to the breach in that relationship, you can actually get closure around that. Because again, if that thought is not giving you life, then it's taking it away. The other part to this is also avoiding shouldering and absorbing other people's triggers, traumas, shame, blame, and hurts. Okay, let me repeat that. Avoid shouldering and absorbing others' triggers, traumas, shame, blame, and hurts. These kinds of false, this luggage, this false responsibility, when someone comes into your space and they make you feel guilty about whatever it is that they're dealing with, or they want you to be responsible for what triggers them, or they want you to be responsible for whatever it is. Get clear about that, because this is likely also another life depleting experience that, again, if you are not careful, then you'll carry an emotional state of guilt. You'll begin to carry that shame. You'll begin to pick up that energy. And before you know it, this is just one other loop of thoughts that's circulating throughout your system and starting to have a negative impact on the economy of your thought life. So this is just a quick little tip, another tip to add to your things to consider. You also want to face your truths and take courage with you. This just goes back to, or this really works in tangent with reconciling relationships. It doesn't necessarily have to just be a relationship, but you may have your own traumas, right? You may have your own things that you're concerned about, or your own truths that you have not allowed to breathe, that you have not really stepped into. Honor this process and honor your truths, because when you don't, this again is going to have a negative impact on your thought life. Hold fast to what you know. Take courage with you as you approach and you embark on journeys of having to get comfortable in whatever your truth may be. Some of you just simply know too much, and you need to get very strategic on how you abandon certain facts. Facts are good. It's good to study. It's good to be aware of whatever your industry is or whatever you are wanting to get better at. It's good to have this knowledge. But when facts become faulty and they become decrepit, or they become an agent that hinders your belief systems, then you have to be able to strategically abandon certain thoughts until you can gain the appropriate strength and until you can build up the kind of thought life that actually contributes strength and power to you. You got to set that aside. And I'll somewhat switch gears on that, but stay within the same vein. Sometimes your analysis creates the paralysis. And I think many of us have heard that by now. Analysis paralysis. Again, you simply just know too much. You have too many facts, and those facts are hindering you from moving into the next cycle or the next chapter of your life, which is calling you into more and it's calling you into deeper. So these are things that you really need to be aware of. Finally, I'm going to suggest that you discern between your test and your limited belief systems. Okay, and really they work hand in hand. If you see your test correctly, you know your test is working through your limited belief systems, bringing you into your highest good. Okay, I'm going to say that again. If you see your test correctly, right, when you see the challenges that are happening in your life correctly, some things we bring on ourselves, and even within that, it's going to work for your good. But there are certain kinds of tests that it's not because you have a dysfunctional thinking pattern, but it is the spirit, universe, God, whatever you want to call it, that's bringing you into something that's much higher, or into something that's much deeper. And you have to know how to discern the two of those so that you understand how to view your test and you get clear about what you need to be learning while you are going through that test. Any test, especially as you have gotten clear about your state, any test is going to bring you into something much deeper or higher. So we want to embrace that, no matter how challenging it is, no matter how life altering it becomes, no matter how it repositions us, it's always going to work for our good. That's something that we want to get clear about. Shifting your belief system into knowing. And that really does take us into a completely different teaching and completely different conversation. But this is what I want to share with you all. I know that there was a lot of information to share, and there's going to be a lot of things to unpack. And I strongly advise you to go back and watch this recording, press pause in the necessary areas, and really think about that. Before I leave, I want to leave you with a quick little practice. We'll do this together. This is something that I do with my clients using some of the heart math practices. And this is something I do with my students daily when I'm teaching in the classrooms, is we normally take a 5-minute pause. And I'm teaching high school students right now the importance of taking at least a 5-minute pause to disconnect, close your laptops, turn off phones, put all that stuff away. It's important that we learn how to do this. This goes back to something I shared earlier, a tip that I shared earlier, which was disengage. Okay, so there's going to be one breathing pattern that I want to share with you, something that you can incorporate. And there's several different videos and several different articles that you can just do a Google search, as I've done with many of the facts even today, and listen to certain videos that have enhanced the information that I share. But do your own research, but I'm just going to share one and just walk you through an affirmation or the intention that I set earlier, okay? So we're going to start with an inhale, 4 seconds. Exhale for 6 seconds. Just do that a few more times. Again, inhale for 4 seconds. Exhale for 6 seconds. That's time. Going to reset the intention, and that is every possibility of every kind is available to you. Every possibility of every kind, of all kinds, are available to you. You can do anything you put your mind to. And I do mean anything. And we'll close it off there. Thank you so much for joining me for the H2o podcast, where we address limited belief systems. Please stay tuned for more. Next week, we'll have a couple of guests back on the show where we are going to be dealing with how to really take our business to the next level and how all of this really is connected. But our belief system is going to be so important to address and deal with and be aware of, so that we know how to again show up in life and be our best for others, for ourselves, and how to bring that energy into the quality of what we're providing, whether it's a service or whether it's a product. So we're going to get into some of that next week. So stay tuned. If these are things you're interested in, please go to the website, look at some of the workshops that'll be starting up next month, and get involved. We're going to join this journey together. And I'm going to walk you through some very practical tips. We're going to go through some very deep moments, some very simple moments, but all of this is going to literally transform us into our better and best versions. Love you. Join the wave. Make sure you are staying connected to my IG. You're staying connected to all the social platforms that you've seen on the website, and more to come. I love you, and have a fantastic weekend and a fantastic week.